Hi, I'm Cindy Morales. Welcome to the Shout My Story podcast, where we share interesting stories of women who choose life in difficult circumstances, as well as people who help them. My guest today is Beata Fayankova. I first met her back in 2018 at the March for Life. She had recently chosen life. Her baby at the time was an infant. And what I've noticed from filming women who choose life, that they're really happy when they first have their babies. And I wanted to circle back with Beata to find out how she's doing now, just a few years later. And so she is 32 years old now, and she has 2 kids. And she's a public speaker and an advocate for women and children. And she is a relational trauma recovery enthusiast, which I am hoping to hear more about, actually, Beata. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
I am happy because we did make a short film of your story back in 2018, but for anyone who hasn't seen that, can you give us a quick recap of that whole circumstance? How old were you?
Mm-hmm. So the long story short is I was 24 at the time when I became pregnant. I was 25 by the time my daughter was born. I was living in Rhode Island at the time with her father, and we had just recently moved there. I think it was about 10 months when I found out I was pregnant, so we hadn't settled yet. There was a lot more to do to make that new place home. And we had gone there to kind of start fresh, begin anew, for our relationship to have a chance away from some of the familial circumstances that we were battling back at home. So, I was 24 and kind of lost in my life, not really sure where the trajectory is heading. I'm looking over here at my notes because there's so much to this story, and I just kind of want to focus on what matters most. But I think, we were both from broken families. We had both come from broken families, and we're just very, very lost young adults trying to figure it out, and it wasn't
When
figuring.
backing up just a little bit,
Mhm.
when did you come to the United States? How old were you when you
So
came to the United States?
I was 15 when my family moved to Ohio. My stepfather and my mother had gotten married, and so my mom and myself and my brother had relocated from Belarus to Kent, Ohio. And that was the beginning of my American life, and that's where I'm living now, actually, again. So
So when you got here, it was a very, I'm imagining a really big culture shock, like two very
yeah,
different places.
yeah. I mean, a big culture shock, but I think to give context to the situation, we come from Belarus, where there's been political unrest for generations. I grew up in circumstances that were affected by that heavily. Fatherless homes, great grandfathers who have suffered from being in a camp or forced to be in war, poverty, post Soviet regime, all that kind of stuff. So there's just a lot of baggage that comes with growing up somewhere like that. Then on top of that, my father died when I was an infant. I was 1.5, and so my mom was pregnant with my brother at the time. So even within our lifetime in our family, there's just a lot of heavy
Trauma.
limitation. Let's just say a lot of limitation, a lot of trauma, a lot of suffering just from the get-go. And then of course my mom tried to do her best to, you know, make a family for us so that we had another parent, so that she had the support, and she attempted to do her best. But I mean, it was also traumatizing for us children to witness, the ups and downs of it all. Um, and so eventually, yeah, she met my stepfather and decided to marry him. And they didn't have necessarily a successful marriage. He was getting over a divorce, had 3 children prior. I think they both had certain expectations that didn't exactly, happen. And so, yeah, just a lot of unrest within the family. I think never quite a settled home life for me, and so
How,
that's where
how
I
old were
was.
you when you met your boyfriend? The boyfriend that you had the child with?
I was 21. Yeah,
Okay.
he was 23. And so he came from a home that was very broken as well, just in a very different, way, looked very differently. But the result is the same, young people who are not prepared for adult life yet feel that they need to make it happen for themselves and figure it out. But yeah.
So when you moved out to Rhode Island and you settled down, what were your expectations at that time?
Well, I tried to go to school. I tried to have an education, but that kind of family life that was, never peaceful, never feeling safe. It has an effect on a child where you really struggle to focus on yourself. You struggle to understand who you are, your identity, your goals. The trajectory of your life. You kind of grow up serving others and making sure everybody's safe, making sure everybody's okay, especially as a daughter in a family. So schooling did not work out for me just for the lack of focus and consistency in my home life. I wasn't able to give it my attention. So I was just working, retail jobs, service jobs, anything that I could get my hands on in Ohio. And so my expectation with Rhode Island was that if I had my determination and hard work, that I was able to make some sort of an opportunity for work, just like I did here in Ohio, which was pretty, flexible. I never was out of a job. Like I never had a problem. You know what I mean? I've tried different things. I've had success with a few. So I didn't expect it to be so much harder in that community, which is, a very small state compared to Ohio. People kind of expect to know each other. Opportunities are reserved for those who people know more so than just anyone who's good for it. And I wasn't aware of that coming into the situation. So what happened, unfortunately, was no matter my experience, no matter my skills, gifts, or anything, I was just stuck in service industry. Waitress, bartender, that was like the only job that I could get, which wasn't really beneficial to me because I have scoliosis and that's like my biggest physical limitation. So eventually I ended up suffering from a back injury from working that way. And yeah, I couldn't really make an income for myself. So
And so this
that
is this
created a very harsh circumstance there.
that's the situation that you were in when you got pregnant?
Yeah, because I was post having the injury on my back, and so I could no longer be a waitress, but I could bartend. But that came with staying up really late, being around people who are drinking all the time. It's just like not at all conducive to family life or being healthy or anything like that. So at the time of pregnancy, I knew that if I were to choose to be a mom, I had to leave that job, which put me in the position of being completely dependent on my partner, who was not supportive. So that was the conflict there.
Okay, so you're I'm just recapping. So you're in a state you're
Mhm.
not really familiar with. Your
Right.
employment is shaky and your partner is not supportive and you're pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
this is why you considered abortion.
Yeah, I would say like every single circumstance in the book, I can say I truly had, relationship insecurity, financial insecurity, lack of health insurance, lack of friendship circle because I didn't know people yet well enough. And I wasn't really invited into his circle as much as I thought I would be. There's just things that you expect something a certain way and then life happens completely differently. So yeah, no support system, like friends, family, all being away, that on top of being an immigrant and most of my family is overseas as it is. So really just every circumstance in the book that you could possibly think of, I had it. Mental health limitations that come with living like that, just feeling like depressed most of the time and a bit powerless to the amount of it all. So yeah, it was very hard to see the possible success in keeping the baby. It felt like a very irresponsible thing to consider because I didn't have what I needed.
And so did you make an appointment at an abortion clinic?
Yeah, eventually. So I really didn't want to, but of course there was great pressure from the outside to do so. So I was kind of taking as long as I could and praying as much as I can. But then eventually it came to the point where, I felt like I had to do it. So I made an appointment. And then I think I rescheduled because I was just pushing for that time, and praying for that sign that, like, no, I can walk away without having to do this. Because, I mean, it felt wrong from the very get go. I never wanted to go that way. I actually had a kind of breakdown over the whole thing, but Yeah, I did end up going to the rescheduled appointment, which was pretty much like the last window of time that you could take a pill without it being a surgical procedure. And so kind of went there against my will, just
Was your
out of
partner, was he more pushing you towards an abortion, or was he was pushing you towards the abortion?
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Um, and so, yeah, and another thing is too, though there wasn't extreme pressure outside of our relationship, when I would tell people about expecting, they would go, "Oh, what are you gonna do?" There wasn't like congratulations or that's wonderful or like did you plan to or are you ready or like do you need anything, like nothing. Like one person said congratulations, the woman who I worked for when I was a waitress before my injury. And she had enough wisdom to understand what was happening and knew that I needed the little support that I did. But honestly, the way that people reacted, the way that my family and I interacted, and the way that they saw me, like everything added to me feeling like I'm not capable, you know, I'm not good enough. So it had to take a lot of faith for me to believe in myself against all of that, you know. And I had to really stand up for myself and my child.
But you made the appointment for the clinic, and then what happened? How did you come to choose life?
So, I mean, I was praying relentlessly, like, God, please give me a sign. Please tell me I'm not crazy. Please tell me I could do it. There's got to be a way. Like, this can't be the right thing to do. Like, I knew in my heart it wasn't. So I was just waiting, taking my time, praying as much as I could, paying attention to like every little thing, just really looking for that sign. So when we had gone to the appointment at Planned Parenthood, it was like Saturday morning. I think I had the first appointment. It was like 8 in the morning, very, very cold, very early. We get in there and I realized that I forgot my wallet in the car and they need my ID and everything to get me checked in. So the receptionist with her terrible attitude was like rushing me around like crazy. I'm running back out to the car by myself. My partner is waiting in the lobby. And as I'm approaching the entrance, I see that there are people standing across the street from the Planned Parenthood. And I see that there's security in front of the doors. And though I had no idea about the pro life community or the movement or the support from women to choose otherwise, I just kind of knew, who they were. Because why else would they be there and why else the security would be there? So my last attempt at getting that sign from God was walking over to those people across the street. And I just extended my hand silently. And this man just gave me this pamphlet without a word. And I stuck it in my pocket and I went in. And so when I was there, I asked for, when my pregnancy was confirmed and they asked all the questions and everything was done and ready to go. They asked me if I was, ready to proceed and asked them for a few minutes. And so I had just quickly read over the pamphlet and it was enough for me to say, I think I'm good. And, because what I was praying for more than anything was another way, you know, a way out of that predicament and that conflict and that decision that I was not at peace with. And the pamphlet was actually titled Another Way Out. And when I opened it, I noticed that to each of my concerns and fears, there was a community of people or a nonprofit organization or a fund or a place where I could go and get the support that I needed. So once I resolved that I wouldn't be out in the street or hungry, um, I would be okay. That was enough for me to say, I'll keep the baby and, take what comes next.
Just parenthetically, did you pay the abortion clinic before this? Did they make you pay in advance?
So interestingly so, what gave me the little bit of extra time while I was there, it was definitely divinely orchestrated, We were using each other's bank accounts, my boyfriend and I at the time, and I had used his bank card for something a few days ago and then they like charged them twice and we had put an alert onto that without thinking that it was going to freeze his card. So when we came there and we got checked in and it was time for him to pay, his card wasn't active anymore. So he had to leave and go to the bank. So I had like 45 minutes there all to myself without any pressure from him in the lobby or in the room or anywhere else. And I could think for myself and I could, consider all the questions that the nurse was asking me. with clarity and take my time to read the pamphlet. And so I I read it through. I came out of the room and I said, "Can I reschedule?" I didn't tell them I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel like dealing with the back push or whatnot. So I just said, "Can I reschedule?" And they said, "Fine, sure." And I made it sound like it was about the money. And so I just wanted to get out of there as soon as I could. There were all these people waiting and sitting in the lobby, and the sentiment was like, it seemed like people were waiting in line to go to the bathroom. It was so casual, I couldn't really just sit there. So I made my footing and I saw him on the sidewalk. We met when I had made my decision. I'm not doing it, and he's like, "What are you doing? Are you done already?" Like, I was just coming back in to pay for it, and I said, "I'm not doing it." And of course, we had a huge fight about it, and then he kind of accepted the fact. But um, the more my pregnancy progressed and the more unsupportive he was in action, the more I understood, like, I really need to make this a path for myself and not expect him to jump on board.
Did you get any help from a pregnancy resource center while you were pregnant?
Absolutely, yeah. So, because those resource centers and everything was in a pan flip, and my relationship was not supportive, you know, on and on throughout the first trimester, I think like mid second trimester, I started reaching out and trying to get a support network for myself. And so I got in contact with a pregnancy center in Rhode Island, in Providence. And I began with some counseling and just some emotional support and stuff like that. And then I think I also, yeah, I had ultrasounds done because there were questions I had about if my pregnancy was progressing correctly. I was feeling really ill, and the hospital I was going to in the city was just very neglectful. A lot of residents, because of my job, I had to get on Medicaid. Having that kind of insurance gave you really, really poor treatment at that facility. So I was very desperate to have some health questions answered, have some emotional support, just anything they could offer, and so they were definitely very supportive. And so once we had built trust and a few months had gone by, and things started to get better for me and my pregnancy started to feel more healthy, um, I felt that I was ready to exit that relationship and actually move out of the household, which was when I was 7 months pregnant. And then I moved into an unwed mother's home that the center had connected me with. And they're all part of the local network of pregnancy support. So then, yeah, I got to live in this unwed mother's home, which was so healing and so recovering. And I got to finally, feel good about what I was doing, feel good about my baby, feel good about my pregnancy, not feel like a problem, you know. And so that was amazing, wonderful healing. I think I probably felt safe there for the first time in many, many years, maybe since coming to this country. And so this was the same time at which I started to publicly speak about these issues and share with other women very actively, because I could understand now it wasn't a personal problem.
The reason I wanted to ask about the pregnancy resource center specifically is we're working on a film that addresses the accusation that pregnancy resource centers are fake clinics, and I wanted
Mhm.
to know if you felt at any time that you were given misinformation or that you were lied to or deceived in any way by the pregnancy resource center.
I don't believe I was deceived in any way. I don't believe there was any misinformation. I think it's really tough to do this work. You know, people aren't perfect. We're all we're all imperfect beings. I think there's a lot of pressure that comes with doing this kind of work, and you're also under a constant spiritual attack. So, because I've done this kind of work, and I think sometimes it's a really difficult position to hold. So for me, what I found, actually, I'm going to refer to my notes because this I think is really important. Um, let's see. Yeah, there's like this great discrepancy between people who offer the support to pregnant women, and then the pregnant women who end up in those positions. And so, what I mean by that is the people who are doing this kind of work are usually coming from a place of privilege. Even if it's not financial privilege, it's a privilege of having like a stable home life, maybe good family relations, maybe support from your partner, um, things like that. Just having peace in your life or in your childhood to where you tend to choose right for yourself in every area of your life. And so most of the women who end up in that position where I ended up, I think, have a very different experience of life on earth. And it changes you. It changes your worldview. It completely completely changes you to the point where I don't think you're able to be optimistic. I don't think you're able to have faith. I don't think you believe in good in people. I don't believe that people in that position feel safe. There's so much trauma that goes into having that be your life. And so I think that discrepancy needs to be paid attention to, because it's not so easy as like you work with a woman who's struggled, who's been lost, who's been, hurt by these circumstances, and you just bring her to God and she just goes to church and she decides to do good and it's done. Like, it is so layered, it is so complex. There's so much healing that needs to happen. And I think that, yeah, the crisis pregnancy centers need to focus to continue to understand where these women are coming from and not to expect them to be, the same just because they're told the truth. It's a process of reparenting and loving people when they're coming from households where they didn't know they were loved. They didn't know that they matter. Um, they didn't know that they're good or they have anything good to offer. It takes a long time to convince a person otherwise. And I think that's the missing key. And that's why I'm so passionate about trauma recovery, because it's not that anyone walks around wanting to do wrong. There's a reason why that happens.
You think that you had the opportunity to do that healing though, in the maternity home that you were at?
For myself, yeah, for myself, I think, in the care that I got from the ladies at the pregnancy center, and in the care that I got from the woman that hosted me and her husband, and the feeling of safety that they created, I was able to finally process things. I started dreaming again. I could sleep well again. I could eat well again. I could tell what I felt again. I wasn't in a constant stress response. And so, yeah, the healing began there. And then I had to really fight for it moving forward, because, it was a safe haven I didn't get to stay for a very long time in, unfortunately. Not that I was pushed out or anything, but another pregnant woman arrived and made me feel unsafe. So I was only there for about 2 or 3 months.
When we met you, your daughter was, I think, 4 months old.
Mhm.
And, at that time, where were you living? Where were you at in this recovery at that time?
At that time, I left the pregnancy home and I moved in with my daughter's godparents, who were also new in my life, who I met through this network of believers and kind of pro life champions, I guess, locally. And so I got close to this family, and they really fell in love with my daughter and wanted to be her godparents. And we were living with them for a little while.
And how old is your daughter now?
She's 7.
7. Okay, I was thinking 7 or 8. Okay, so let's fill in the gap a little bit between when she was 4 months and when she was 7. What's been going on in your life?
So since then, let's see. Personally, I've just been trying to find the right way to apply what I have learned about this problem of, um, relationships, love relationships, um, family and marriage values, becoming extinct, um, the safety of children in this world that we live in, whether in utero or post birth, um, just have completely, been my focus, I would say, and work with women and children and creating change and speaking up about things that have not worked for a few decades and a few generations, and that, need to be changed.
Unfortunately, we only have a few minutes left, so I do want to kind of fast forward. Did you stay in your relationship with the father of your child?
I did not, but we had reconnected when my daughter was 5. So after the healing that I have created for myself over the years, that was really, I think, the changing point, because once that was done, the way that I related to my family and him and anybody else for, love or for work or community, it was different, because I was then a different person coming from a very different sense of self, and that sense of self was also, you know, had a lot of clarity, a lot of perseverance, a lot of personal power. It wasn't somebody that could be taken advantage of. It wasn't somebody that could be manipulated or convinced to do somebody else's bidding. And what I've seen is that the healing that I've done has had a radiating effect onto everyone that is still in my life, And so that's really beautiful. It's been very challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's been extremely challenging, but my family life is different. I have support from my mom. I have support from my brother, even have support from my grandparents overseas as much as they can. And I have support from their father. And so I'm not able to stay at home with the kids and focus on my passion and focus on my business. I don't have to be in the 50-50 relationship. I don't have to overextend myself and do all the work and provide. And like, I finally feel that I'm taken care of too.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. Are you in
Mhm.
relationship with this person or in a relationship with a different person now?
Yeah, I'm in a relationship with the same person. So the person that I had Camellia with, George, yeah, we reconnected and got back together 2 years ago. And so we had another child, our son Elias,
Oh,
and
great.
he's 4 months.
All right. So, do you kind of feel like it's a happily ever after situation? Because I mean, I don't think life is happily. Life is full of challenges, and there is bitterness
Mhm.
in life, and so. But it's kind of sounds like you have a happily ever after going on here.
Well, thank you. I think, the grass is always greener on the other side, honestly. I don't think that there is necessarily a perfect situation. It's so much better than it was. There's so much work to do. We're still not married. He's still not a believer. There's still a lot of things, a lot of bridges to gap. But I can say with utmost certainty that I did the right thing by keeping my daughter, because not only did that, strengthen how I felt within myself and my faith, but also created so much blessing and so much light for him and everybody else in my family. The evidence of the blessing that her life is so loud, so clear. It's undeniable. And now because of that too, we have another child who I'm sure wouldn't be here. So I think it saved us all in many ways, because the challenges that we were facing, George and I, when being abortion minded, those were things that lived in our family for generations. So when you take a step in the right direction, it could really have so much healing and so much potential and so much blessing, not just for me, not just for him, but his brother, his parents, my brother, our grandparents, our friends. We live in this culture where many people aren't parenting, many people aren't getting married, and I think it's such a testimony to it's possible and it's beautiful and it's fun. And
I'm happy to hear this. So it sounds like your life has progressed in a way that is positive, and I'm very pleased to hear that. Thanks so much for being on the show. We're out of time. I would love to have you back another time to talk about this trauma recovery, because we didn't even touch on that, and that sounds like a fascinating topic and very apropos to women who choose abortion, I think. So another time we'll have to go through that. But thanks so much for
I would,
coming on today.
thank you. God bless. Take care.